What we will now do is jump straight into our first panel. As we're talking about glass, we cannot not have a first panel dealing with the circular economy, the infinite recyclability of glass. So I would like to invite our first panelist to the stage, Joanna Aregui. She is Industrial Director at Saint-Gobain Glass and President of Glass for Europe, the European Flat Glass Association. We have Aurel Ciobanu-Dordea from DG Environment. Please take a seat. Directorate of the Circular Economy at the European Commission, DG Environment. Welcome, Aurel. We have replacing Xavier Iblet from the European Domestic Glass Association. We have Paola Di Scoria, who is the Secretary General. Xavier apologizes. He has caught COVID and he's in France, so no way of joining us this evening. And Vitaliano Torno, who is President of OI Europe and President of FEVE, the European Container Glass Federation. Can we give a warm round of applause to our four panelists, please? So can glass enable a world without waste? Now we have three glass sectors represented here. Maybe I can start then on the far side with Vitaliano, representing the packaging glass sector. Can glass enable a world without waste? What do we even mean with waste in the field of packaging?
Thank you and good evening to everybody. I'll start challenging maybe the question. I don't see how glass can be waste. Normally I like when I do a little speech to mention Aristotle of Plato because I would like to display I did classical studies, so a bit selfish. But this time let me mention an American rapper, will.i.am, Black Eyed Peas. They say, waste is waste only if you waste it. If you don't waste it, it's not waste. Now, it comes down to the point of, is it possible not to waste it? And in the case of glass, yes, definitely yes. In both physical and chemical terms, glass is completely identical. When you start, when you use, when you recycle, there is no change. It's a single material. You all know that. If you visit one of our plants, you see that the glass which is entering the plant, which is, by the way, is 80% of our raw material, is glass already. And the one that actually is physically and chemically identical. We don't do resorting, reprocessing, refining, nothing. It's exactly the same thing. So I will challenge the fact that glass is waste. Glass is waste if you don't deal properly with that, like anything can become waste. So glass is helping, by the way, reducing waste. So let me mention another kind of waste that is not supposed to be waste. But glass is excellent in the preservation of product. Glass is excellent in the food contact, in the sense that it's doing nothing, absolutely inert, nothing at all. And so glass is helping to prevent the food waste. These are real waste. You have something which is not intended to be waste, food, that can become waste if you waste it. Glass is helping also in this respect. So I will start, if you like, by challenging the first point. Glass is not waste. But it is not waste if we know how to handle it. We have two fundamental models, you can work with glass. You can reuse the bottles. In this case, is 100% return. Or you can recycle, in the case you cannot reuse for whatever reason. In that case, the recycling rate of glass is what can close the loop. And we are around, I think, 79%. I wish I could have told you we are 80%, but unfortunately 79 something in 21. But we are working to close the loop. And if we do, we stop calling it waste. Full stop.
Okay, that's on the packaging side. We also have the flat glass sector representing, so buildings and automotive. What do you understand as waste in this sector, and can glass enable a world without waste?
So in the case of our sector, maybe I'll have a different approach than my colleague, because reusing, it's not something that we know very well how to do today, but waste along the value chain we have, and we try to tackle that challenge. First of all, what we are handling very well in order to minimize the waste and reuse as much as possible is collecting all the waste from our direct customers. So there is waste along the chain. Our customers, when they process the glass, when they transform it into glazing, they have waste. So what we do today in the flat glass, we have set up a lot of reverse supply chain, diverse types depending on the customers, depending on the countries, using intermediaries or doing it on our own. And we try really to tackle that, and this allows us to recycle around 25%, so the content of the batch that we put in our furnace has already 25% of recycled content thanks to that. The big challenge now for us is how to avoid the waste from the deconstruction, from the renovation. Because today there's waste, glass which is wasted, which is not recycled, which is not returning to the flat glass furnaces. And what we really want to do is to create a closed loop of recycling, flat glass to flat glass. When a building is being renovated, when a building is being demolished, we want to make sure that this glass is sorted and comes back to our furnaces. And it's a challenge today. It's a challenge because it's not easy, because it has to be sorted. Very often it's mixed with other types of materials. And additionally, if it has to come back to a flat glass furnace, it has to be sorted very carefully, because we cannot introduce contaminants. We need to produce products which are transparent and which enable vision. So there are a few challenges, but we try to tackle them. And I think the figure is 4 to 5% of the glass from construction, which is being recycled at the end of its life. So there's still a lot of potential in that.
Yeah, different starting points, very different types of products, and we'll try and get more into the kind of actions that would be possible to improve that. In terms of tableware, domestic glass, Paola, what is waste in your sector, and can glass enable a world without it?
In our sector, domestic glass, well, look at your home, your drinking glasses and every servingware, it is reused and reused and reused. And in fact, to reduce waste, what we do is to work on the articles themselves, to make them, to improve their surface resistance. For instance, when you put it in a washing machine, so that it is not attacked over and over by all the repeating cycles. We want to make articles which are more solid, which are thinner, so that the volume of broken is not is diminishing. In fact, we have already a very nice narrative in hospitality, in restaurants, and everything. And we need to adapt also to the new habits and new needs to cope with the circular economy and develop new materials and new articles.
Okay, so really the accent there is more on the durability of the product, its resistance, and the fact that it can be reused over and over again. So if I turn to you, Aurel, I mean, that's always the thing with the circular economy, and you're in charge of the circular economy. It's 2 words. It sounds very simple, you know. And here you see 3 very different sectors, very different starting points. What is your then reflection? You know, can glass enable a world without waste? And is this actually your vision?
Yes, I would like to say hello, first of all, and to thank you for inviting me to join you for this very interesting debate. And indeed, I have appreciated a lot the diversity of points of view of specific segments of the industry, which are very helpful for us to understand better a number of challenges. But of course, we have, I mean, these are not revolutionary novelties. From the perspective of the policymaker, I would say that glass is a response to waste generation and to one of the big challenges of Europe, and I would say of the world at the beginning of the 21st century. Together with climate change, I think it's the excessive use of resources and a certain waste of resources. And in order to address this challenge, we need to turn the linear approaches in the management of our economic activities into circular approaches. And I think glass, together with metal, but and to a certain extent with paper, but glass in itself, it's a standard bearer of circularity, and is a response to limiting waste, reducing waste generation, pioneering circular economy, better using resources, also of recycling, because it is easy to recycle, and also mitigates or in a way helps the interface between producers and consumers, as you have explained very well, the virtues of glass packaging. So it is a very good answer, maybe almost ideal answer. I am here to join the group of those singing the Ode to the Glass. So it's almost the ideal solution to these challenges. However, we need to keep an eye on the reality as well. In spite of its virtues, even economic virtues, and in spite of its energy footprint, which is relatively significant, I think still the balance of advantages is, the balance is tilted towards the advantages of glass compared to its environmental footprint. In spite of these manifest advantages, we see, in particular when we look at the evolution of the packaging and the materials which serve as packaging, a degradation, a decline or in the use of glass for packaging. In the last almost 20 years, we have looked at statistics, and the ascendance of plastic and single-use packaging, be they in carton or cardboard together with plastic and so on. So the question is, what can the glass industry do in order to reverse this trend and to gain, I would say, against a political and intellectual backdrop which is favorable to encouraging glass to regain territory, because there is a certain perception, sometimes a misperception, against plastic. But I would say that mentally speaking, our societies are ready to welcome more glass in our everyday life. So, and I have heard very interesting remarks about the interest of flat glass industry in the interest you take in construction waste recycling. And of course, we are aware also as consumers, because I am also a consumer like everybody else, the efforts of the glass industry, which produces consumer products, or articles or applications, consumer applications. Language goes in this area, where I'm a newcomer because I started in May this year, and I try to learn the language of the people I'm meeting. So in consumer applications, we have seen the efforts of the industry to make more resilient applications for consumer use, because I think this is one of the main challenges for these applications. So we can only encourage this.
So you speak very highly of the material. It's a privileged material. You're even saying we could even sing an ode to this material. So that's maybe something we could challenge the panel to do at one point. But maybe Vitaliano, if you could just quickly or briefly respond on the packaging question, what glass can do to reverse this trend, and also to come back to the closing the glass loop point. What are you doing to improve the situation from you mentioned the 79% current rate, to go even further?
Yeah, thank you for the question and thank you for a very nice word. I do believe that glass is on paper, sorry, it's difficult to say on paper when you speak about glass, but the same theory, in theory, is an ideal material. The point is that we really have the determination to make it practically an ideal material. So, first point is close the loop. Close the loop is also the name of an initiative that we launched and is an initiative which is touching all the stakeholders, so not only the glass producer, but also the brand owners, so our customers, also the municipalities, also the waste management company, which is helping out in the collection and the reprocessing of glass. And close the loop, it's something that we started with a minimum goal, which is to go to 90% recycling by 2030, so by the end of the decade. Reality is that we discuss internally whether we should say 100%, but we have to be realistic, and so our aim is 100. 90 is the way we measure the progress. Because if you say 100, you are doomed to fail by definition. Because, and you know, this is a long history. I mean, we started collecting and recycling glass more than 50 years ago. We had a voluntary stewardship program that what we set up at the time, they're all now integrated in more modern, of course, producer schemes, standard producer responsibility schemes that are across Europe. So our goal is 100%. Is a promise on the 100%? Not, because I can't. On the determination to get there, yes, definitely.
Okay, so that's a partnership approach to try and continue increasing rates. In the flat glass sector, how do you approach this kind of project? You have a very different starting point, obviously. Can you outline some of the actions that you're taking in your sector to increase the rate?
Yeah, so for sure the starting point might seem a bit more modest, but nevertheless we are doing a lot of actions, and as I said, with our direct customers we are already collecting most of the waste that they generate. And this is glass that is easy to reprocess in our furnaces. We have a lot of constraints when it comes to very mixed glass from different types. So it's true that we might seem a bit more limited. So what we focus on really today on the next years in order to leverage the recycled content in the flat glass is the end of life. So what happens to the glass at the end of its life? And I will give two examples of initiatives we had at Saint-Gobain, so I'll speak for my company. One is on the automotive sector. We have started this year a partnership with Audi, which is one of our customers. They help us to collect the glazing from the automotives, the end-of-life glazing, so windshields, backlights, side lights. And thanks to the help of a professional recycler, we managed to dismantle those products and to reuse the glass in our furnaces in Germany, in that case. And I have another example for buildings. So for automotive, partnering with our customers, it's already a very good leverage. It can be very powerful because the customers are few customers. They directly touch the end consumer. In the building, it's more difficult because when you try to work along the value chain, you will multiply the stakeholders by hundreds, by thousands. So we need to have some organizations supporting us in the building. In France, what we have done, and we have been working on that for many years, so again, a Saint-Gobain example, we have built a network of partners. The partners are professional waste collection centers or are also social and solidarity-based enterprises, and they help us to collect glass from renovation and to bring it back to our furnaces. And next year in France, the extended producer responsibility for buildings will be set up. So this will help a lot also in the financing and structuring of this recycling value chain. So we really expect in a few years from now to be able to collect tens of thousands of glass, end-of-life glass.
Okay. Do you have any specific targets that are set either in legislation or in the sector, or is it more work in progress?
So in France, I think the target is by 5 years from now to collect 30,000 tons of end-of-life glass yearly. So it's a very challenging target today compared to where we are.
Okay, and in the tableware sector, what kind of actions are you putting in place? I mean, you mentioned the durability of the product, but maybe in other kind of market segments, are you also trying to, place more glass?
Well, in fact, there is typically a high potential for mining of glass that is soda lime glass that is consumed 1 million ton every year, and some installations reuse and remelt this glass to produce new articles, but not all. And one of our big problems is the collection points, because at the moment we cannot, the consumers, the citizens, they cannot discard their domestic glass in the regular collection points. We have technical constraints, we have fiscal constraints, we have regulatory constraints. So we are in talks with all the stakeholders to improve that.
Okay, that's another challenge. And in terms then of policy, Aurel, I mean, you're working on the Circular Economy Action Plan. Can you give us a sense of what would be your expectations of the glass industry in the context of that Circular Economy Action Plan? And maybe also reflect on one big policy that you're working on that will have a major effect on some of these sectors represented here tonight.
Yeah, look, I think one thing which is very important, I think also in the sense of regaining the territory lost compared to other packaging, and I want to be very clear, I'm not against plastic, but I think it is not justified economically. I would say that the glass has lost terrain in comparison to plastic. So I think innovation is a very important thing, and the capacity of the sector to develop tools, technologies to support its fight for higher rates of recycling, but they are already there to a large extent, for sorting as well. And I appreciate a lot the interest of industries which are not directly how to say, under the obligation of certain targets, to get into recycling more and into recuperating glass on the market. And if I were to, I mean, the question is very legitimate about what kind of piece of legislation. Of course, it's is relevant in the current context. Of course, I mean, it smells from distance, and it is known by the at least the representatives of the industry and by the NGOs that we are working on a legislative proposal concerning packaging and packaging waste, and that would turn the existing directive into a regulation, bringing forward a set of rules that aim to establish to improve the level playing field across the European Union in terms of packaging and packaging waste, and their innovation will be important. We will bring higher targets, which may be more challenging by other forms of packaging, but I would be interested in this context, although I won't lie to you, the adoption of this legislative proposal is expected to be made by the College of Commissioners of the European Commission by the end of this month, so in 2 weeks' time. So if you make a suggestion today, I cannot tell you that in 2 weeks' time you will see it there, and it's also beyond my power as well, but the time is very short. However, I mean, the process does not end with the adoption by the college, and we can do so many other things together. So I would be interested also to hear suggestions now or later, or in writing, to receive suggestions if indeed the industry, the glass industry, is interested. Later on, and if I may take one more moment, I could think about later on, and later on means in the next 2-3 years, also about the revision of the Waste Framework Directive, where there is a provision also concerning the revision, the strengthening the obligations related to construction waste. And there we need to do something in order to improve the situation, not only from the perspective of glass, but from so many other perspectives. And with this in mind, also I invite the industry which is interested in this to make suggestions to us. We are in contact, but with the industries in general, but we would appreciate exchanging with you. And if I may use one more minute, because I was sitting here next to the representative of Saint-Gobain, and because we have only big ideas in mind, and we also try to make them happen, I can think also about the revision of the end-of-life vehicles directive, which is due for next year, and maybe this will take the form of a piece of regulation which will cover the vehicles from design to the end-of-life phase, but this is still under reflection, and we work closely with our colleagues from the Directorate General in charge of enterprise and single market about this. But in any case, it is sure that we need to do something in terms of recycling targets about a number of materials, including glass, but not only. There are critical raw materials in the cars that we need to exploit better. They are, I mean, we underuse the possibilities for recycling. And when we are concerned to get hold of all the cars which are placed on the European market at the end of their life, is also in order to make to protect the environment, but to make also better use of the residual value, which is still significant, of many materials which are used in cars. So,
thank you, Aurel, and that also sets the agenda for the European Parliament. That's work also coming your way for the next few years. Vitaliano, it's not game over. There's a Commission proposal on its way. What kind of positions are you taking in your sector for this piece of legislation?
In a short time, I'm going to try to give 2 suggestions, ideas, recommendations, put it like that, knowing that the time is short. The first one is we will speak about a portion, half, if you like, of our agenda, which is about the closing the loop. So I go to 100% recycling. The second part, of course, which will not touch tonight, is around the decarbonization. But assuming that we are able to work on both agenda and to get the result we want, we're going to have a completely neutral material. Will be the solution, hopefully. So we need legislation which is helping us achieve this goal, because I think it's a shared goal. And we have to be careful about maybe even non-intended consequences of some legislation. For instance, let me give you an idea, and I'm going to cut a few corners in the interest of time. So imagine that we say, fine, logic of the reasoning. Waste is bad for environment, so we need to reduce waste. We all agree. Packaging can be waste, or to a large extent is waste, because it's not always strictly needed, put it like that. So we have to reduce packaging. Packaging is measured in tons, because it's a way of measuring. So we want to reduce the tons of packaging. If this message is going like this, without any filter, in reality, you're going to see glass disappear in favor of plastic, because plastic is lighter. Because in this process, we are not evaluating how the virtues or the features of a single material that can have a very minimal or negligible actual impact, but the weight. And so this is a danger. So if we have a legislation which wants to limit the amount of packaging which is produced, which I would understand, then we need to be careful to do a legislation at least by material, so that every material will try to reduce, and the net result will be an undistorted improvement of the general situation. But some generalization can be dangerous because not all the material is the same. Give you another quick one. how do we want to improve glass? Glass has a virtue on top of the one we mentioned, which is nice, it's beautiful. You can make actually a piece of art with glass. So we need a legislation which is giving us a chance to prove our innovation, creativity, and capability. If we were to say, you know, from tomorrow there is one bottle which is 1 liter, one bottle which is half liter, and one bottle which is 33, game over. That's fine. The problem is that we're going to kill the preferences of the consumer, and the consumer may switch then to something which is more convenient. So we are losing a tool. So the market or the consumer preference matters, because if you disregard it, you may fail.
Thank you. I think message very well received.
You got 2 weeks, you can do it.
And I see Aurel nodding, and he may still have a bit of time. Joanna, you were also nodding when Aurel mentioned the revision of the Waste Framework Directive and also the one on automotive. Can you just give us a punchline on the kind of positions you might take on that?
So yes, I was nodding because you underlined that we are doing things even though we might not have very strong binding targets. So yes, we are doing things because we really believe that we should recycle more. There are many virtues in collecting the glass and recycling it. So we want to continue on that way, and we want specific targets. So if there is one measure that would help us, and I will explain it in the case of the construction, but I think it can be also translated to automotive. I mean, it's the same concept. In the building sector, today there are some recovery targets, and we have 3 issues. So first of all, it's a recovery target in deconstruction, not a recycling target. Second, it's set in tons. So you were mentioning also being very specific, Vitaliano, on the end, making sure that it doesn't have side effects which are not likable. So it's set in tons. Glass is a small percentage of the total tons of a building. It's a lightweight material, so it's very easy to achieve the 70% target of recovery without attacking the glass. And at the end, to make sure that the glass is recycled, it has to be sorted. It's expensive to sort it. To recover it, it's easier to just use it as an aggregate or to landfill it. So it has to be very specific in order to make sure that we don't just recover, that we recycle, and that we tackle all the materials. So for us, what would be helpful is for the construction sector, for example, same case for automotive, to have very specific targets per material type in order to close the loop and to bring back the flat glass to the flat glass.
Okay, message well received. Thank you, Joanna. In the tableware sector, you mentioned already the collection aspect for recycled drinking glass. Are there any other policy issues, maybe one, a punchline again, that you would like to mention to Aurel here?
When I hear my colleagues saying we want flat glass to go back to flat glass, it's really an example that there is not one single recycling scheme, but several lines. And that brings difficulties because there is lead crystal glass, there is borosilicate glass, which goes into the oven. They cannot be part of the recycling line of flat glass, for instance. This is why we have that constraint, and we have a lack of a proper collection system for this. And also we have constraints of purity and our cahier des charges for our articles, which may prevent us from using recycled glass because there may be some impurities. I was speaking once to the former director of ECHA, the agency, European Chemicals Agency, and he was saying we will achieve circular economy once there will be no single element constituent of hazardous substance in materials. Okay, but sometimes we need to use some of those materials that are not welcome anymore. And I gave the example, okay, it's far from domestic glass, but I gave the example of Hubble, okay, you need to use, there is no other substitute than trioxide arsenic to obtain a glass that is really fit for purpose. And we must really think of what is fit for purpose, so we must understand the different qualities of glass, their applications, the constraints linked to their application, the constraints linked to their collection, and what we would suggest also is to obtain a support from the authorities, for instance, towards less single-use applications, and the Commission is engaged into this. Perhaps it should go further. We need some initiatives, some support, and we need also some promotion for making the citizens understand the necessary shift to these new consumer habits. We have new generations which are really committed to these new habits. Okay, it needs a promotion.
Okay, new business models to be supported as well. Thank you so much to our 4 panelists. I think you've exchanged great insights onto your different sectors.